What's up, ladies? Welcome to another episode of the Revitalized Womanhood Podcast, and I am here with the lovely Susie Trigg Tucker. Okay, do you go by Susie Trigg Tucker or just Susie Tucker?
Well, in my everyday life, I go by Susie Tucker, but online, I do use my maiden name as a middle name. Yes,
I love it. You're hyphenated.
Yes.
Susie Trigg Tucker. She is a business coach and a podcast host, and her podcast is called the Soul Aligned Business Women in Business, right? Soul Aligned Women in Business.
That's
yes,
right.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Will you please introduce yourself to my listeners?
I will. Hello. I'm so happy to be here with you, Gina. Thank you for having me. My name is Susie Trigg Tucker, and I want to say this because I use Trigg because my dad passed away when I was 8 years old, and so it was really important to me because my family's all girls. So my maiden name, didn't have like a legacy to pass on to. So I have chosen to use it in my professional life because of that reason. So wanted to throw that in there. And I'm a business coach, and I'm a mindset coach for entrepreneurs. I also work with women in different aspects of business. So I work with women primarily on marketing, but we work in all areas of their business to really allow the most authentic version of you to show up online, so that your clients meet you in your marketing. They know the truth of who you are. They know that you are the person they want to work with, and your marketing does all the heavy lifting for you because you are authentic and real in your marketing. That way, by the time you get someone, who is making the decision to work with you, they really have that true understanding of who you are. So that is primarily how I help my clients, and I love it. Yeah, that's who I am.
Do you know that is such... Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit too.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that because that's all about womanhood, right? That's the beautiful parts of being a woman is being lucky enough to be a mother. And right now it's summertime and we're all feeling that very, very emphatically.
Yes. My kids are at
All
camp
the kids
today.
Are home.
Yeah, mine are at
Yay.
camp today, and it's a full day camp from 8 to 4, so it's a treat this whole week.
So fun. That's way fun. All three of mine are home, and my husband's been hunting in Hawaii for the last 2 weeks. So it's actually been great. It's been fine, but they may come in here screaming at each other. It's what it is, right? That's mom life, and we're okay.
Yes.
We embrace the journey.
Exactly. My dogs might start barking at any moment too. So we're here for it.
You know what? This is exactly on point of what you're talking about, is helping women show up as their authentic selves so that people really truly know who they're getting into business with, right? Yes. Because it's easier said than done. My husband and I actually just had this conversation because he just started a podcast actually as well. He's been on here with me a couple of times. And obviously, when you very first get on a podcast, you're just, you're just like stiff and you're a robot and you think that you're supposed to act a certain way. You're supposed to look a certain way and talk a certain way. And really, it takes a minute to kind of shake out those, this is me. I am me. So what I naturally am is what should be coming through. Me being fidgety or I've got my legs crisscross applesauce and, being comfortable. And so we talk about this a lot. And even a person like myself, who I feel like I try to do my best to be my authentic self and to show really turn the camera. I've got laundry on the floor. The bed's not made. My kids will become barging in here. That's me. But even though I am very mindful of that, I still don't think that people truly know the Gina that goes to the lake with her girlfriends and hangs out on the pontoon. Do you know what I mean? Not that I'm not trying to show that. It's just, how do you truly show your authentic self?
Yeah. I think it's a big question that a lot of women's lives curl into when they come into business in the online world specifically. Because I was actually just talking with a client about this, that so many of us have been conditioned to feel like when you go into, I'm air quoting here, well, you can see me, we're on camera, yeah. You go into professional, realms and career,
right?
That you have to be polished and you have to be, the word that we would use is professional. And that simply isn't the case always online. Not that you're letting your dirty laundry hang out or anything like that, But the reason that online business, in my experience, works, why people are drawn to other people that they're hiring in a service-based business, is because of the connection that they feel. And that goes against so much of what we've been taught, that, the more authentic and vulnerable you are, the more you're willing to talk about what's really going on with you and with what you understand your clients are really experiencing in their emotions and their lives and what they're thinking. The more that you're willing to speak about that and be vulnerable and sharing your own story and story selling versus just being, kind of more polished and quote professional, the more people connect with you, the more that they want to hire you. And that is radically different than many of us were taught. Many of us were taught, hey, hide yourself when you walk into an office setting or a professional setting, because nobody wants to see that. It doesn't matter. And it's just going to make you look weak. And that's what I think a lot of women are afraid to show up online, even if it's not intentional. There's sort of this shape shifting that we do when we start marketing ourselves, or we show up to turn that camera on and do whatever it is. And listen, as I say this, me too. Okay, I teach this. This is how I help clients, but I'm always doing this inner work on myself too, because it's coded deep within us. The conditioning is.
Yeah, it totally is. What was it that made you, where did your journey begin where you were like, this is what I want to do. I want to help women, because you're not just helping women in business. You have a very specific target, and that's soul aligned. What was it that got you on this journey?
Yeah, my history and my story is that I lived a life crippled in perfectionism. I mean, I just was someone who thought I had to be perfect, who thought, was very afraid of other people's judgments. People pleasing, performance based living is how I grew up. It was what I got praised for and reinforcements about. I was a typical really good student, but I wasn't. Meaning that I knew how to perform at school. I'm smart enough that I could get the grades, but I was a secret rebel inside. I was a secret, kind of almost even a secret bad girl inside, because I was so rebellious against this act that I was putting on. I didn't obviously at the time know that, but that's kind of how I grew up. In high school, I was like in the National Honor Society, the prom queen, like all these different things. And yet inside, I really didn't align with that version of myself, but then that's just how I lived my life. I went to college. I did all of the things that my family kind of expected of me and that I thought was the right thing to do. And I ended up going out of college. I went to this job that I absolutely hated. It was at I'm from Texas. It was at the Texas State Capitol building. And it was this really posh job in that I was working for a senator and I got to wear fancy high heels to work every day. And I hated every dreaded moment of going to that. And all of my girlfriends that I had graduated with were teachers. They were having their summers off and they were having 2 weeks at Christmas. And I was like, I really want that vacation time. So I went and got my teacher certification and went into teaching. Didn't even think at the time that I wanted kids. I was very anti-kids at that time. Got a first grade teaching position. Took it for the time off, for being really honest. And I fell head over heels in love with teaching and with teaching little kids. And I was really good at it. And I stayed there for 12 years. And then it was like the next phase of life was I got burned out in teaching, had my own kids by that time. And I just still was like, what's the next thing that I would be expected to do? That was always kind of where I was coming from. What would the world expect me to do next? What would the right move be for me? And though my life from the outside as a teacher, and then I ended up moving into the wine industry, and I helped winery teams with their sales and marketing. So that's where I really learned sales and marketing. Helped them sell wine clubs. I developed an online education training system for them. And it was always kind of, what pain can I get myself out of? Like if I was burned out in teaching, what's the thing that would be the expected thing that would get me out of this pain. And then there'd be more pain created because I was doing something I didn't really love, right? So it was always kind of creating this inner turmoil. And there was just always this dissonance that I did not have any single awareness of at that time in my life. I was moving through the motions as so many women do. And during the pandemic, I lost the wine industry job because wine industry shut down. And I thought, okay, well, this is my time. I knew I was a writer. I knew I wanted to write books. I thought I would like to speak on stages. And I thought, well, this may be the time to do that. And I hired a life coach during that time. And she broke my mind wide open to understanding all of the dissonance and all of the gaps that existed between who I was inside and what who the authentic me was and what I was performing as on the outside. So I guess when you ask what brought me here, it was a life lived of not being authentic to myself, but not even knowing it because I just didn't have the awareness. So I didn't know what it meant. And I think that's an interesting question when you ask women, like, who are you in your authentic self? A lot of people will go, I don't know. What is that? Does it mean when I'm who I am on the pontoon with my girlfriends? Does it mean who I am when I'm fussing at my kids? Does it mean who I am when, I don't know, like people really get stuck on that question. And so the way that I would answer it is I think it's a discovery for many women. I think you have to kind of rediscover who you are and what you want and who you are outside of your roles. Because a lot of women, when they come into my container, I'll say, hey, okay, here are my 2 questions for you. Who are you? And what do you want? And you know what happens most of the time? You want to take a guess what happens when I ask those 2 questions most of the time?
Oh, I can guess because I have a women's community as well. And my questions are, what are your dreams?
Yeah. And tears, right? Like a lot of times, like immediate choking up. And people will mostly answer to who are you is their roles. I'm a mom. I'm a business owner. I'm a wife. I'm a community member, whatever it is. And so I think it's a discovery, finding out who you are, what it is to be your authentic self. And then it is a big paradigm shift, almost cracking yourself wide open to then do that online and let people see that in the World Wide Web.
Right. It's interesting you say that. One of my good friends, I just had her on here, which we should get you two together. You would love her. Her name's Teresa Ford, and she does a lot of inner child work and coaching. And she said it's with the roles. We wear these roles as our armor almost, right? Because we don't know anymore what the value is underneath the roles. We're creating our value. We're creating our worth by saying, I'm a mother. Well, now I'm valuable. Now I have worth because I'm doing that. I'm serving a purpose. Or I'm a wife. Well, now I have value. Now I have purpose because I'm doing this role. But you take those things away and think about it when we were little kids so she says, Teresa says, it's my favorite thing she's ever said. And she says, we were celebrated when we were born just for breathing. Our worth is in us breathing. That's it. That is it. I mean, strip away everything else. Make it as simple as that. Our worth is in us just being here. So when you break it down to that, that's pretty intense to all of a sudden strip away all of this armor that you've covered yourself with and not allowed the world to get past. And now all of a sudden you strip that away and it's like, what really am I?
Yeah.
And having to figure that out. That's a scary place to be. So when these women come to you and you've said, okay, strip away that armor. Let's get down and dirty. Let's get down and really talk about this. Where is it you like to start?
Yeah, I start with them in the awareness of just how uncomfortable that eek moment is when we say we're stripping it back. We're peeling back the layers here. Because that discomfort so often sends them, if they're doing it without guidance, right? Whether it's me or anything else someone else in their life that is helping them and standing by them and saying, you're safe. we have to I first help them with recognizing that the discomfort is okay. So many of my clients come and they are scared to death of that discomfort of stillness, discomfort of the questions that, we're asking. And really the most important thing for my clients, because they're in business, is they are scared to death to show the world that. And so I often say, like, we're doing marketing and mindset and worthiness work and all of this simultaneously, which is not a short order, right? That's a really tall order for women. But what's beautiful about it is when you're willing to do the work, in the inner work that I work with my clients on. And that's why I say soul aligned women in business, because my clients know in the depth of their soul that they were called to this work. It is so much bigger than making money. It's so much bigger than online fame. It's so much bigger than anything else. It's something that someone told me yesterday, I can't not do this. And that's how my clients feel. That's how I feel. There's no part of me, whether I wanted to or not, that couldn't do this once I discovered it. And so soul aligned, because it's not just that you're really good at what you do. It's also that it's growing you. So these goals that my clients are setting out to achieve, they're setting goals so big that they have to grow into the person that achieves them. And so soul aligned, because we're doing the work of soul growth. We're doing the work of discovery, just like we talked about, of who you are when you strip it back. And at the same time, doing something that you really are passionate about and that you're really good at and that you have talent and gifts in doing, whether you're a coach or whatever kind of service you provide. And so being able to allow people to witness you in your growth in the marketing. And again, this doesn't mean going out and like airing your laundry and telling everything. I always say, like, we're not sharing places that still need a Band-Aid. We're sharing places that, there's a little scar there left, right? That you're far enough away from, but the vulnerability piece. And the word that women use the most when we do this work is they feel liberated to be able to feel that feeling of, I don't have to construct, I don't have to look for my value. It just is. And so I think ultimately I would say the work is figuring out and discovering that your value does lie in the fact that you have breath and the fact that you are here. And it's a lot of unlearning, a lot of, like you said, stripping back.
Yeah. And that you have purpose in this is so much bigger than us. That's how do you help women who feel overwhelmed by the enormity of their dreams? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I am not yet the woman that I need to be to, like you just said, that I need to be. I have to grow into this mm-hmm. woman, because she's got big things to do and I'm not there yet. Yeah. How do we get to that point when we're looking at it? It's like a cliff almost, right? It's like, how do I get across this?
Yeah. I think it is about helping people feel safe enough to take that risk, because they don't know what it's going to be when they jump. They are so scared about what that's going to look like and what it's going to take to grow into that person. And by the time most people come to me, they already have gotten themselves to the point of knowing that they have to take the risk, that it becomes more painful not to take the jump and not to explore their passion and purpose than to do it. And so I think for me, sometimes I need to help people, like when they first come, if they're coming to a discovery call or something, I help them get to that place. But I think for the most part, I have found that there is that little intuitive notion inside of women that they know they have to do this. They don't know why. It doesn't make logical sense. They are scared to death sometimes to do it, but they know that they have to, because the pain becomes more insufferable to not do it than to do it.
Right. Okay, so with women like that, I think there is an understanding and already a level of ownership that this is my path. But what mm-hmm. about, do you still find women that get to to you, to your coaching stage, do you still find women that have, you said it in one of your episodes, you said controlling our own free will. And that's like extreme ownership, right? That is taking ownership and accountability of the fact that we are here, one life, we have one chance to do whatever it is that we want to do. I love that you said, what would the world expect me to do next? Because we have all been raised in that trap. I've got this little cartoon that it's these people, and every time they walk by this guy, they hand him a bar and their expectations, and he's built himself a prison out of all of these people's expectations, right? And I think women especially, I know men, we know you got your own podcast, but women, we were just talking about this on our leader call today, that we are so burdened. We burden ourselves with expectations of others. And they're really legitimately are, if I feel like I have like, say 20 expectations of others on me, there's probably really only 2, if even.
Yeah.
I mean, the legitimacy of the actual people feeling expectations on us it's fake. It's a belief we have that is not there. How do we rewire that? Because that is conditioning.
Right. Yeah. I think it's the discovery that, and to your point of asking how I help women who realize their own control of their free will and really take ownership for that. I think the first step is always feels a little bit like you're going backwards to really own that those expectations of the people that you said, maybe 20 people have put these expectations on you. The ownership is, but you are the one that decided that you were going to allow that expectation, right? So in essence, you put the expectation upon yourself to fulfill whatever that person was putting on you or asking of you. Now, that feels extremely hard when all you have ever known is that you will be in trouble or unsafe in some way if you don't abide to that person's request of you or expectation of you or desire of you. So it's first really, I think, unpacking that you even allowed that, because some of us, well, a lot of women, when we're first doing this work, we don't even realize that. We just think it was the only way that there was, that whatever our mother or our family or our partner or whatever that, whomever it was, that what they wanted and the desire to move in that expectation, like we don't even know we're doing it. Like when I was doing that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, moving through life like that, I didn't know that. I mean, maybe I did a little bit. I knew what my family wanted from me. I knew what kind of the path that they had put me on, but I wouldn't have been cognizant enough to realize
that there was anything wrong in that.
Right. Yeah. And that was the way that I moved through the world. And I personally would get very triggered by women who were free, and like free-spirited women would really trigger me, and I would be really judgmental of them because, of course, now I know I was just judging myself, that I was actually one of those free-spirited women, because P.S., we all are. But I would judge women who took non-traditional paths or who were willing to speak out and say things. And the funniest part about this is that I married somebody who is so outspoken and such a rebel in his own right. And I always was like, we are so opposite. But I found like him to be so refreshing, even though he offended a lot of people because he's so himself and like outspoken, and people, are triggered by his own freedom of himself. But that's who I was attracted to. That's whose energy I wanted to be in, because that is what I secretly wanted so badly my whole life, was to be able to express myself in the way that I wanted to express. I just didn't know how. And I think that so many of us don't. And it's like the pull for me to know that there are some people in the world who will never explore that because it's too scary. It's really heartbreaking to me. And I know I can't reach every person in the world by any means, but I do feel a grandiosity of what I'm called here to do, to speak and say what comes through me and what I understand about this, so that I can impact as many people as God wants me to. And, that soul alignment. I always say my clients are soul aligned. They're there. God already arranged that we're going to be in each other's lives. So yeah, it's big. It feels really big.
Yeah, that is really big. And even just sharing your story, every time you share your story, every time you get on your podcast and you share something else, it's giving that one person permission to do the same thing, right? That's kind of what you needed when you met your husband. You just needed this permission. Oh, someone else is doing it this way. That means I can do it this way too. That's all of these examples we have now. I mean, it used to be just you knew a person, but now you just see it everywhere because you have access to every person in the world. But it's like you have examples of, so I cannot stand people who don't take ownership, who don't have accountability for, this is your life. You decide which way you go. You decide where it ends up. You do. I'm not here for the excuses of, oh, well, I had a bad rap. I had a bad family. I had a bad upbringing, because there are so many examples of people who had it way worse off and made it out of there way better. So I am not here for that. I want people who have the ability, maybe they haven't quite practiced it yet, but the ability to say, hey, if they did something, I can too.
Right.
Do you have a story of one of your clients that you're just like, it was incredible to be there with this person while this happened? This journey was just incredible.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I do. And I have to think about that, because something that was coming to mind, if it's okay if I share a different story that I was thinking about as you were talking.
Go ahead.
It's not a client story, but there are two people that stick out. I'll never forget these stories in the beginning of my career. And it really wasn't even the beginning of my career as a coach. I was still working in the wine industry, but I had started, I called it Insta blogging at the time. I had started an Instagram. I was like 2017-ish. And I was just writing about my own personal healing journey. At the time, I was overcoming a binge eating disorder that I had been dealing with my whole adult life. And so I was healing from that. I was in therapy for that. And I was sharing a lot about my experience openly on Instagram and being very, very vulnerable. And it was very therapeutic for me to do that. But I was just sharing my story with no intention. I wasn't selling anything at the time or anything. And this, as I mentioned, I was a teacher for a long time before that. And I got this DM. It was the first DM I had ever received about this connection point in the story. And this mom who I had her son in first grade. And she was, in my eyes, when I was his teacher, the perfect mom. She was a stay-at-home mom. She was beautiful. She was fit. She would come straight off her Pilates class to have lunch with him every Friday. She was kind of the room mom. She was really kind, just someone that in my eyes, I wanted to be like, because she looked a certain way. She was married to someone wealthy. It was just this ideal that I had that I didn't have. So I put her on this pedestal. And she came into my DMs after one of the things that I had shared, and her story was completely different. She wasn't experiencing disordered eating or anything, but that's what I was sharing about. But what she experienced was, there was a connection in the emotion of feeling unworthy. And she shared something with me about herself that was so raw and so, it was a painful thing that she was experiencing in that moment, suffering that she was feeling about herself, feeling unworthy as a mom, actually. And she said, reading your post, I felt permission to share this with you. And you're the first person I've ever shared this with. She said, and you made me feel not so alone. And my mind at that time was blown wide open that someone like her, who I had put on such a pedestal to check every box of perfect. Again, I was very much still in the perfectionism. There are people who are better than me because they look a certain way or they have a certain status in society or something like that. And it made me realize, oh, dang, we all bleed the same blood. Like we all have inner things that connect us no matter what our outside circumstances were. And I'll never forget that moment. A few weeks later, I was sharing something else. I think I had written a blog for MOPS, and it got picked up by MOPS International. So it was MOPS across the country, national. And this other person reached out to me. Her name was Kitty. I'll never forget this. And she was 80 years old. And she told me that she had never also felt the permission to share some of her inner things that she was experiencing with her body. That she was telling me basically she was 80 years old and she had felt so unworthy her whole life based upon the fact that she had been overweight and she had always just felt so not beautiful because of the way she looked. And she didn't have children, but she loved helping children in her community, and that had always made her feel very unworthy. And she wrote to me and we had that connection point, and I realized, okay, there's something to this. There is something to that vulnerability. All stories very different than my own, but that essence of the feeling and the emotion connected us. And I think that that's why when I think about teaching marketing and helping women with their marketing, it's not bro marketing. It's not, there's this formula. It is how much essence can you put in your marketing of the feeling that your clients are experiencing. And so when I help my clients, they come to me, and oftentimes, so now I'm thinking of the client specific that you're asking about. We've actually been working together going on about 3.5 years now in some form or fashion. But she came to me being that person who she was highly educated. She was a pharmacist, completely burned out in that, came into the online space doing coaching, hormone coaching. And she was following all of the formulas and frameworks and blueprints that the online business coaches were selling. And she was making a lot of money, more money than she ever dreamed possible, as many people online have the ability to do. And she was so unhappy. So once again, we look at someone who from the outside to the world looked like she had it together, was making successful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And on the inside was feeling so unworthy and so miserable. And so that client and I have worked so hard on self-trust and trusting that her way to do business and life and motherhood and all the different things that she experiences in her own aligned way, that it's safe to do that, because she learned in that experience, in that first time that she came to me, that the money did not bring satisfaction. For me, when I was in body struggles, my body, no matter how small I could manage to get it, never brought me inner fulfillment and satisfaction. Same with this, woman who reached out from across the country to me that was an 80-year-old woman. And I just realized that those outer circumstances, they can look one way, but we're all connected through how we feel on the inside. And so many of us are not willing to try, not able to, not willing. We have to get to the willingness, I think. But we're unable to trust ourselves if we're not following someone else's outside agenda or path or direction. And so self-trust is a big part of what I do with my clients.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Figuring out what the foundation is. So there's pillars, I think. And I started out with 2, but I think there's another one. I'm adding more. There's pillars to this kind of work. You cannot go further. It's kind of like the, what's his name? I'm going to say it wrong. Anyway, I can't think of it. Anyway, his hierarchy, his pyramid of hierarchy versus
Maslow.
Maslow. There you go. Mm-hmm. Is his coaching versus counseling, right? And I don't think you cannot be in coaching, and I've seen this multiple times, until you get these pillars from counseling or whatever, unless you don't need counseling, you've already mastered these kind of things going through life, and it's mindset and self-confidence. Now, I believe there are more, but I think the base to hold any sound structure, you have got to have the basic fundamentals of growth mindset and self-confidence. if you don't start there, if you don't secure those pillars first, no matter what comes after that, you'll crumble. Something will come along and knock you down, and you'll crumble because you don't have the foundation in place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch people who have, especially in the online space, because they'll experience a high success in the way of cash that comes in, and then they might drop from that grace. They may have like a low month or a low dry spell, and they will believe that money took away their confidence, or that money took away their
worth.
And so to your point, like, that shows me that they didn't have that foundation yet, because they were believing that the foundation was built on the success, whatever that may look like. For some people, they're gauging success by money. For some people, they're gauging success by, the degrees that they have, or whatever. Different people gauge success by different things. But you're right. If they don't have that foundation, then they are they're building their foundation on a house of cards, and it just simply will crash down with any blowing of the wind. And so it's interesting. I'm working with someone right now who, she went through a divorce, and she told me that her confidence had completely been, taken away in the divorce. And so we've been working on this, and she told me, I used to be so confident. But the really ironic thing is, as we're doing this deeper work, we're discovering she actually never was confident, truly. She didn't have the foundation, because the confidence came from the external things in the marriage and her career, things like that. And so I think it's a redefining too, right, of confidence, because so many women, especially like in my generation, we were taught that your confidence came from your beauty. Your confidence came from how you looked or what you did, right? So it's almost like this deeper work is like redefining that and rediscovering what confidence truly means.
Well, yeah, that and allowing that, just because you were raised in a certain religion or raised in a certain community or atmosphere or whatever, because you were a child being raised in these with these rules that you didn't create. You didn't create these rules for yourself. Someone else created these rules. And who? Maybe not even your parents. Your parents didn't even create these rules. They're just enforcing them. But you're this child that's supposed to understand why you're living in a way that is pertaining to these rules that you didn't have any part in making, right? So then you get kind of saddled down with these beliefs. And because they're your thoughts over and over and over again, your beliefs, they become your beliefs and your truths. And when you can finally figure out that just because it was imposed upon you doesn't mean it is. It doesn't mean it has to be yours. You don't have to claim it, right? Yeah. And I think when you can start breaking down those individual things, it's like peeling a banana or peeling an onion, whatever layers, you start with, religion that is a huge one. It's like, well, just because someone told you to believe this, wait a minute, I don't have to. I actually don't believe that. Or because someone thinks that drinking this many drinks at night is a bad thing versus having a beer on a Wednesday, or what, you know what I mean? It's one person's beliefs that have been imposed upon you. And I think when you are able to start recognizing that someone else's belief does not have to be your own, and owning that, that's where that foundation becomes solid.
Yeah.
When you can actually stand up against someone else and say, no, I don't believe that, but good for you for believing it, but I don't believe it, and I don't have to, and I'm okay with that.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the part where people feel liberated, is when they understand that, when those walls start to come down, that it wasn't ever a truth. It was just someone's truth, but it didn't mean it was the truth. I think that's a word I use a lot with clients, is speaking their truth and being willing to share that in marketing. And that doesn't mean that your truth is someone else's. But I think what happens when you're willing to be vulnerable and you're willing to be transparent and you're willing to be raw, and again, not saying airing your dirty laundry, but just finding that essence of connection through these emotions, and this is, I think, a really tricky thing for people in marketing, is that your truth may repel other people because it's not aligned with theirs. But the people who haven't yet found that foundation, when they hear your truth, if it aligns with theirs deep down within, it's like drinking from a cool fountain after running through a desert. It's like they just can't get enough. And it feels so refreshing to them because you are speaking to a part of them that maybe they haven't discovered yet. And that's where magnetism comes in marketing.
Right.
And I don't think that, kind of getting on a marketing tangent here because I'm very passionate about this, but I don't think that, I hear a lot of coaches say, like, you want to create people who are obsessed with your brand, and people who, I even heard somebody say, like, you want to build like a cult-like community. And I understand, I'm not trying to bash whoever said that, but what I think is, it's not about somebody becoming obsessed with me. It's about somebody discovering through my marketing what they can become obsessed with about themselves, like what they can love about themselves, what they can feel so refreshed and open and liberated about within themselves. And I think that's the key, right? Is being willing to speak that for those people on the other side of the screen or the other side of the podcast, a microphone, whatever, that you connect with in that way. But we can't do that. Yeah, we can't do it, though, unless we're willing to do our own inner work. And that's the key.
Well, and then you have the confidence of knowing what you are and what you stand for and what you're doing is the good work, is the work that you're supposed to be doing. And so I had a mentor. That's so interesting you just said that, because just had this conversation came up like when I very, very, very first started. I had a mentor that was like, you don't want to bring in other experts because you want to be the expert and you want them to come to you for this information. I'm like, I am not the expert on all things. I mean, right? Like I am learning. I am on this journey. This is all new for me. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was a dispatcher. I was running vacation rentals. I mean, none of that has anything to do with podcasting and running a women's community and creating monthly topics around things like growth mindset, atomic habits, extreme ownership. Like I have to do that work. But in doing that, I want to bring in people that know more than me. I want to always be a student. I think, and I've always had this from day one, just like having you on here. I mean, technically, we have a similar clientele. Granted, mine are more stay-at-home moms type. They're not really all creating businesses, but some of them are. So our niche really does cross. So I shouldn't have you on here because that might send people your way instead of my way. I am opposite of that. I am like, I stand for community. I stand for growth. I stand for owning your own shit and figuring out what your voice is and speaking it and sharing your story, because there's people, like you said, there's people out there that need permission to share their story, need permission to hear that they're not alone and they don't need to be suffering alone. There's other people that are going through the same things. So my thing has always been, hey, if you're not here for me, here's someone that you may be here for, because I want to connect you. I'm the bridge person. That if you are not here and I'm not speaking your language, which I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Sure.
Maybe this is someone who is. Yeah. Here you go. That's my thing. I think that's just a perfect example of confidence, because I know what I am.
Exactly. And to me, it speaks to your desire for service, right?
Yeah, like there's more of a purpose in the why, not the money. Everyone knows it's not the money. Yeah. There's a why here. My husband tells me all the time, this is an expensive hobby that I do. And I'm like, well, I love it and I'm going to do it. So keep writing the checks, dear.
I think, it's like when you are willing to do what you do, everything you just said is like, you're willing to serve the women who come into your community so that they have this place, and you're the leader, which is amazing. And that's why they, they may come for your leadership. They may come because they connected with you, but to be able to find other people in the community, that's truly that, like, to me, it's like that servant leadership. And I think that there's a lot of messages online about, being about you needing to be the star of the ship.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that's really misleading. To me, it just really feeds into this whole, like a typical cheesy 80s movie of the popular girls, where it's like, I hear some people saying like, oh, you just want people to be in your energy. I hear coaches saying that sometimes, and I'm like, no, like sometimes you want to be in that person's energy, just kind of like me with my husband. Like, you're attracted to that because there's something within them that's giving you permission to
They're
say,
interesting.
oh, yes. But it's not about that, right? It's about what they open up within you. It's about what you open up within your community, the people in your community, and then they open up within each other. It's like a light, and it's like one of those invisible ink lights. Like you have the light, the flashlight, and they have the invisible ink written on their heart. And when they meet you, they can see the writing, right? It shows up, and they're like, oh,
right.
She brings something out in me that I want to continue developing, that I want to continue fostering and cultivating. And to me, that is true leadership. It's not about you per se. It is and it isn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you help other women cultivate? Because on the topic of 80s movies, that's so funny because I just watched, what did I watch yesterday? Melanie Griffith and Sigourney Weaver and Harrison Ford. Working Girl,
oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just watched it last night.
Awesome.
And it was all about...
It's been a long time.
Yes, you will. Women keeping each other down, women keeping each other down. So how do you encourage or foster this concept of we will truly rise together?
Yeah.
Like, you will be so much better off if you can create community in these I don't know, if you can cultivate a supportive community or network that helps foster this, like, empowerment. What's the word you said? Liberation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it is about just going along with the theme that we've been talking about. I help my clients feel safe enough to shine and be like a lighthouse.
Unapologetically.
Yeah. And when they do, again, they become the light that shines on the invisible ink in their community. And they all just here I go with my hands getting really passionate, but they all just interconnect, right? I think that it's hard to cultivate community in a true way that doesn't feel threatening if you aren't secure with yourself and you don't know how to truly be authentic. Community can become quickly a place that feels like comparison. Toxic. Yeah, toxic. Yeah. Right. Just like the Mean Girl movies, right? Where so I think the thing that I think I can help women with the most is helping them be that authentic version and helping them feel secure in it and safe in it, so that community becomes their strength, not a place where they feel weak in the room, even if they are the least experienced person in the room, or they are they're, as people like to say, be the dumbest person in the room. Like, you can walk into a room like that with confidence and with your light shining, and it becomes the thing, like you said, that rises you up versus you walk in and you feel small. And that is liberation, to be able to be in a room with other people who you're like, these people are doing way more than me. They have way more experience. Maybe they're way more successful, but being here lights me up because I know that I can rise with them, versus in a former version of myself walking in a room like that, I would maybe not even have walked in because I would have felt too intimidated, or I would have felt too insecure to sit at those tables. And so I think it's helping people be willing to be open to A, sitting at bigger tables, but B, inviting people to their table, to answer your question. That's how I think I help them feel secure enough to cultivate community and then allow what they learn about themselves to spread like wildfire to their communities, to their people that they help.
It's so interesting. I've been going through this actually with something in my community that a mentor program type situation, and it was a real reflection of John Maxwell says in one of his, I think it's Good Leaders Ask Great Questions was the book I was reading, but it says a true leader doesn't need to be cheered on for their students' success. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't own someone else's success. That is theirs and theirs alone.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter if I was there like a boss saying, well, I hired that person, so their success is my success. No, your success is my success because you are successful and you're shining, right? That is where my success comes from. It's not from anything you've done. And I love that. I think of that so often, that it's like, if you can release yourself from other people's failures, successes, anything someone else is doing, if you can detach yourself from other people and just own that you are doing you and you're here to just be the lighthouse, the guiding light, then that's like the best place to start. If you can just own that. What do you think? One of your coming along in this journey that you've learned along the way, that you've had that aha moment of, oh my gosh, if people could just realize this one thing, if women could just realize this one thing. I have a ton of them. They come up all the time. I say, this is my one thing a lot. And it's like 20 different things. But right then, that's this because it just happened. This is that one thing that's like, just because someone didn't succeed at something and you were their mentor, leader, whatever, that has nothing to do with you. They have their own ownership. This goes back to their own life, their own ownership, their own accountability. It is up to me to not take that on. That is just like, what's one you got?
Oh, I think one that's really top of mind right now is that, and this is kind of business reference, but it doesn't have to be. There's so many different ways that this can apply in someone's life. It is that I don't have to look. There's not someone out there that knows a better way for my unique path than me. There may be people that have more experience in similar areas, but there's not someone or something out there that knows a better way than God does to guide me on my unique path. And I think I just had this mind-blowing moment. It came from a book that I was recently listening to, where it said, when you think that there's a certain strategy or there is a certain something right outside of you that is going to make you ultimately the best at what you're doing, the most successful, the happiest, whatever that may be, that thing is actually standing in your way, because your ultimate guidance comes from God, comes from the Holy Spirit within you, guiding you in your intuition and your inner knowing. And that's what I wish that people knew. I wish that people knew your answers to motherhood, to your relationship, to your business, that they are within you. You were created on purpose. You were created with a path that is only yours. You were created to be the best at your unique path. And I'm not saying that mentorship and help is wrong. Definitely not what I'm saying. But I am saying, if I could say one thing that I can impart on every woman in the world, I would say, trust yourself, trust the voice within, trust. I think so many women, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think so many women say, like, I have amazing faith, but then they don't trust themselves. And so that faith becomes something else outside of them. And that is actually, like, God is in you. So it's kind of, to me, it's like trusting yourself, that sometimes the trust is, oh, this person, this mentor or this friend or this family member is the person that can help me get to that next place. Sometimes that's the trust you need, but sometimes it's a completely different path than anyone else has taken, and it feels radically different. It feels uncomfortable because no one's done it that way before, or people have said that's the wrong way before. But that would be the thing that I would say, and that's kind of been my own personal ahas have been, wow, all along I've been trying to force what I thought was someone else's best way instead of looking for my best way. And the more that I own my own best way, which to me, again, I'm a business coach. So for me, it's like an online business. There are no rules. Everything works and everything doesn't work. That is the truth.
Yeah.
The more that I lean into teaching that, the more that I lean into your authenticity matters in your business, the more I'm seeing the flow of success versus that like forcing it or feeling like it's hard. So yeah, I think that would be it. Ultimately, if I could boil that down, it's trust yourself.
I love that. And I think I've been kind of preaching this for the last 6 months to a year, because it started with me, like really, really loudly started with me last July. And my business, and I had a business coach, and my everything was just like this on this trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But we had put off traveling for so long, like 6 months longer than we were planning to, because I was starting this business and doing this business. And my husband finally said, nope, we're gone. We're leaving. Pulling the plug on it. You know, you can do what you can do from the road, but we're leaving. And we left and went international again. And so I just kind of did what I could do. But it was like, it was okay. I had this aha moment of, you know what? I'm never going to get this time back. I can start a podcast. I mean, if it fails, because I'm gone, first of all, it's not going to fail. Like what's my definition of success? But if I put out one every now and again, rather than it has to be 2 a week or whatever, it's okay. Nobody is standing over my shoulder saying, you didn't do that the right way. The podcast gods aren't saying, oh, you didn't put that, and I had this moment of, stop forcing. My word that the rest of that year became ease. Just
love it.
It is what it is. Just let it happen. Like the natural flow, do not force against the natural flow. And ever since that, I've just kind of had these like constant aha moments of exactly what you're saying. Is if you allow yourself to slow down and just be, seriously, just be in the present, like be okay that the room is messy, the toys are everywhere. Guess what? They're going to be out again tomorrow. It's like, don't even clean them up. Like, what's the point? You have years of seasons of what's the point? Like, just let it be. It's fine. But if you can do that and slow yourself down and quiet yourself enough to realize that you have a lot of this, just like you're saying, these God-given gifts, you were created for a very specific purpose. But because of social media and because of all of these things that we're just, the chaos, the noise that we're just quieting, or, shutting ourselves down, it's like, instead of my baby has a fever, what do? Oh, well, let me look and see what all of these women online are doing, instead of just knowing in my heart, okay, we need to cool him down, take his clothes off and let him, see what happens, give ibuprofen, whatever. But instead we're rushing to the internet, WebMD, what's Susie on Instagram influencer doing, living her life? How is she doing everything? We're looking for all of these external, like you're saying. And so we don't listen to ourselves anymore.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I love that. Totally agree with you in that.
Well, like you said, in your little cartoon, it's just those bars that we're putting up around ourselves when we do that.
Yeah.
And it becomes self-imposed. And then yeah, it's like a full circle moment here.
It is full circle.
Yeah.
You do it to yourself. You're asking how to get out of it, but you're the one that built the cage in the first place.
Right.
So now you have to, one by one, remove the bar.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
So good. I can hear my kids wrestling. I can hear them banging against walls. I'm like, okay, how much more time do we have left in these kids? How can these women find you? Where can we send these beautiful women to come find you?
Yes, well, I would love for you to visit my podcast, Soul Aligned Women in Business, or you can find me on Instagram at Susie Trigg Tucker. And those are the two places that I hang out the most.
Yes, I love it. I love following along. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time and all of this. I know it's going to land exactly where it needs to. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here.